We are.
Okay, I'm calling to order the Zoning Board of Appeals on June 19th as a first.
At 6:10.
At 6:10. Okay. And if Jennifer would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I only learnt it like 6 months. I don't even know. I can't, I'm afraid. I am American.
All right,
that's
I
okay.
haven't learnt it by heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I knew it, but I can't read it.
I just want to say this is the smallest crowd we've had in 2 years.
Yeah.
No
Right.
kidding. All right, to start, we're gonna elevate two people. I'm right now the chairman for the evening, but I'm gonna pass that baton on to Jake, and he will continue in that role, and we're gonna elevate Jennifer.
And Doug, you're a full member, right?
I am a full
And
member.
George, you're a full member?
Full member.
Just, but the chairman, or, yeah, the acting chairman can just elevate someone.
Right, that's
So,
what you can do.
so you can just, as
You don't
chairman duties, you don't
you don't
need a
have to
quorum
motion.
to do it.
Right, and you just did Jennifer.
You just did it.
Yeah, and actually, we got one more tonight than we thought we were going into,
Mhm.
thanks to Jake. Okay, Jake, it's yours.
All right, can I get the agenda? All right,
Okay. You want me to read the case, first case out?
yeah, if you could read 2315.
Okay. Case number 2315, request for rehearing of case 2315. Appeal from administrative decision from Matthew R. Johnson, Esquire, agent for Keith and Allison Kellerman, 21 Hazen Road, map 128, lot 21, to determine whether or not their circumstance allows for short-term rentals related to a denial from Robert Boyd, code enforcement officer, dated August 16, 2023, to Article 4, Section 4.2 of the Town of Madison zoning ordinance. And it was posted everywhere on June 13th.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, if I recall correctly, I was present for this case. Doug, were you present for this
Was
case?
not.
You were not, okay. Have you had a chance to read over it,
I have.
and do you feel up to speed on it all?
I'm set to go.
Okay, Jennifer,
I was present.
you were
for the
present?
review.
George, were you present?
I wasn't, but I had the opportunity to look at some of the minutes.
All right, do you feel
Rough
as
minutes.
you're up to speed?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do you have the findings of fact there for it, Doug?
Right there.
2315. All right, I'm just going to read the findings of fact. So again, this is just a request for a rehearing. Some of the criteria for that are new information coming to light that could wildly change the outcome, a procedural error, or as if we as a board just feel that it deserves if we feel this case deserves to start over from square one. I'm going to read the findings of fact from case 2315 on April 17th, 2024 and May 15th, 2024. Number one, the primary question is whether there is a valid claim to be grandfathered. Number two, the home is in the Silver Shores Homeowners Association. Number three, Silver Shores Homeowners Association was chartered in 1976 and currently has 13 homes, 11 of which are rented seasonally, as has been the habit since 1976. And I believe that in parentheses that means it was Mr. Audette, the vice president of the Silver Shores Homeowners Association, that testified to that. The Homeowners Association charter foresees rentals without distinguishing between long or short term. Number five, Mr. Audette and Mr. Johnson stated that the charter of 1976 provides the homeowners with the right to an existing non-conforming use. Number six, we have testimony from Mr. Knight and Mr. Audette that the Moores, who were the owners from 2015 until the Kellermans purchased the home in early December 2022, were part-time residents who rented the home out regularly every year. They estimated that at perhaps 60 days or more per year without documentation, the Moores declined, number 7, the Moores declined to provide testimony or documentation, preferring not to get involved per the Kellerman's testimony. Number 8, prior to 2015, the home was owned by the Davis family, who were full-time residents and therefore were unlikely to have rented the home out per Mr. Audette. Number 9, the board understands these characteristics to define a motel based on the definition of motel in the zoning ordinance and the common understanding of what a motel is, and that is A, it is a building or buildings that offer the service of lodging. B, for compensation with the obligation to pay meals and rooms tax. C, which provide basic support services such as cleaning and scheduling. D, it has independent access. E, adjoining parking. F, the lack of a rental contract for non-transient occupancy. Finding of fact number 10, the short-term rental of 21 Haven Road meets the definition of motel. The property has been rented on a short-term basis since 2015 on the order of 60 days per year, and the current owners intend to rent for a similar amount. B, presumably, meals and rooms tax is being paid, though no documentation was submitted to the board. C, basic services were provided. The owners used Airbnb as a contact and scheduling agent. The home was provided, furnished, and cleaned. D, there's independent access to the building. E, there is adjacent parking. F, there was no rental contract for transient use. Finding fact number 11, motels are not a permitted use in the rural residential district according to Article 4.2 of the zoning ordinance. Based on the findings of fact, as noted above, the Madison Zoning Board of Adjustment on May 15th, 2024, denied the appeal from an administrative decision by a roll call vote of 4-0 because there was no legally established pre-existing non-conforming use, since the Homeowners Association charter provision for renting was restricted by the Madison Zoning Ordinance of March 2015 prior to the purchase and first rental of the house. The rental meets the characteristics of a motel as defined by the ordinance and described in the findings of fact above, which is not permitted use in the rural residential district under Article 4.2 of the zoning ordinance. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay.
Would you like me to, it's gonna be a little lengthy, so read this aloud, because that's what we usually.
Yeah, we probably should read it into the record.
Okay. It's gonna be a little, it's like 7 pages, so.
Maybe we should do one section at a time, discuss it, read the next section. You think that would work, or read it all at once? You want to do all at
Probably
once?
do it all at once, that's what we, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Keith and Allison Kellerman versus the Town of Madison, case number 2315, motion for rehearing of the zoning board of adjustments, May 15, 2024, denial. Now come Keith and Allison Kellerman, by and through their attorneys, Divine Mill Branch Professional Association, and submit the following motion for rehearing of the Town of Madison zoning board of adjustments, May 15, 2024, denial of their administrative appeal. In support of this motion for rehearing, the Kellermans state as follows. Procedural and factual background. The Kellermans are the owners of 21 Haven Road, Madison, New Hampshire, the property located in Silver Shores Homeowners Association. They purchased the property on December 1st, 2022 and began renting the property on a short-term basis in the spring of 2023. Prior to the Kellerman's ownership, the property was rented by a prior owner, the Moores, from 2015 until they sold to the Kellermans in 2022. The Silver Shores Charter provides homeowners with the right to an existing non-conforming use and foresees rentals without distinguishing between long or short-term. In March 2022, the Town of Madison enacted amended definitions in the zoning ordinance which attempted to limit a single-family resident to those with a single dwelling unit used for non-transient purposes. These amended definitions are an attempt to prevent homeowners from renting their properties on a short-term basis. Beginning last year, Madison began sending cease and desist letters to various property owners, including the Kellermans, who have a history of renting their property on a short-term basis, but acquired their property after the zoning ordinance was amended. On August 6, 2023, Robert Boyd, Code Enforcement Officer, issued the Kellermans a notice of violation. The notice stated the Kellerman's property was 1, a non-owner occupied short-term rental, 2, in violation of the zoning ordinance, and 3, continued use of the property in violation of the zoning ordinance would result in Madison commencing legal action in court. On September 14, 2023, the Kellermans filed an appeal with the ZBA challenging the August 16, 2023 notice. The appeal hearing was scheduled and continued on October 18, 23, November 15, 23, January 17, 24, February 21, 24, March 2024. Then the appeal was heard on April 17, 2024, and on May 15, 2024. The ZBA upheld the Code Enforcement Officer's decision. The Kellermans believe the ZBA erred legally and factually in upholding the Code Enforcement Officer's decision and therefore filed this motion for rehearing. His argument. The Code Enforcement Officer made an error of fact and law in issuing a notice of violation to the Kellermans. As will be explained below, the Madison zoning ordinance amendments cannot be applied to the Kellermans' property. Further, the motel definition as defined by the 2022 zoning ordinance is inapplicable to this property. The Kellermans' use of their property is a pre-existing use and thus exempt. The Kellerman property is a pre-existing non-conforming use. The property was used for short-term rentals historically and after the most recent amendments to the Madison zoning ordinance in March of 2022. Because the property always has been used for short-term rentals and that use has not been abandoned, the current owners, the Kellermans, are entitled as a matter of law to continue the pre-existing non-conforming use. The Madison zoning ordinance expressly recognizes the ability to continue prior non-conforming use at section 1.3C, which states any land use to the extent existing at the time of the passage of this ordinance, but non-conforming thereto, shall have the privilege of continuing in such use indefinitely or reestablishing in such use within 1 year of any discontinuance. The Kellermans provided all the requisite proof to show short-term rental history both before and after the zoning ordinance was amended without any gap. It should be in use, I think. The ZBA erred as a matter of law when it determined that renting was restricted by the Madison zoning ordinance of March 2015 prior to the purchase and first rental of the house. The 2015 zoning ordinance has the same language in section 4.2 of permitted uses as the 2022 zoning ordinance does. However, in 2015, the zoning ordinance had no definition of transient, no definition of a single-family home, and the definition of dwelling unit states one or more rooms arranged, designed, or used for residential purposes with independent sanitary and cooking facilities. There is no time limit or temporal restriction on this 2015 definition. The permitted use, section 4.2, specifically states that single-family houses, undefined in parentheses, are permitted. The evidence was undisputed that the property meets the definition of dwelling unit because the structure is used for residential purposes and has independent sanitary and cooking facilities. Whether the Kellermans occupy the property or short-term renters do, they all use the property in a residential manner. It is the use of the property that is the required analysis based on the Supreme Court's Town of Conway versus Kudrick decision 175 NH 714 721 (2023). Any ZBA reliance on the commercial use definition in the zoning ordinance to support a finding that the 2015 zoning ordinance restricted short-term rentals is misplaced. That definition refers to the sale of merchandise, materials, or services. None of those terms apply to the rental of property. If it did, then the ZBA would be forced to declare that no long-term rentals could occur in the rural residential district because there is no way to distinguish between long-term and short-term rentals using the commercial use definition. For this reason, this activity at a dwelling unit that is indisputably residential in the nature of the use cannot be construed as a commercial use. Only after the amendments in March of 2022 did the town of Madison conceivably have a basis to try to claim that short-term rentals were not permitted in the rural residential district. The Kellermans have demonstrated the property was used consistently for short-term rentals before and after the zoning change in 2022. Their use of their property is a pre-existing non-conforming use. The ZBA erred and should grant this motion for rehearing and then grant the Kellermans administrative appeal for this reason alone. The ZBA decision is constitutionally invalid in the argument. The zoning ordinance amendment to the definition of a dwelling unit upon which the code enforcement officer is relying is unconstitutional because of its vagueness, ambiguity, and overbreadth. As written, it is unclear what the definition intends to cover. Second homeowners, as well as seasonal renters, could be barred by this new definition from assessing their properties in Madison. The revised definition of dwelling unit does not differentiate between owner or rental occupancy. Were this amendment to be valid, an owner of a second home bought after March of 2022 would not be allowed to use his or her property for periods of less than 30 days. The ZBA erred by ignoring this concern. This definition is thus void given its complete ambiguity. The notice of violation letter claims that the 2022 zoning ordinance changes make it clear that a house that is primarily rented to guests on a short-term basis rather than used as a residence does not meet the definition of single-family house. However, the change to the ordinance does not include the word rental. Moreover, the town voted down 2 proposed amendments directly addressing short-term rentals. Given this set of circumstances, Madison should not base its enforcement actions on ordinance language that is so vague. The Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court has cautioned that any ambiguity in a land use regulation should be, in his opinion, construed in favor of protecting private property rights. See Conway v. Kudrick, 175 NH 714, 721, 2023. McDonald, C.J., concurring opinion, in parentheses. Following that guidance should cause the ZBA to grant this motion for rehearing and then grant this administrative appeal. The ZBA decision violates due process. The amended Madison zoning ordinance violates the substantive due process rights of the Kellermans and creates a regulatory taking under the New Hampshire and federal constitution. Madison lacks the statutory or constitutional authority to restrict a use of their property that the Supreme Court has confirmed as a residential use. Such an action is fundamentally unfair generally and to the Kellerman property in particular. By barring them from using their property for residential short-term rentals, unless owner-occupied, Madison is depriving them of a recognized fundamental right of property ownership and creating a regulatory taking. The town and ZBA's actions will have the effect of forcing owners to sell their property. It is not the province of the town or the ZBA to force owners into economic hardship. The ZBA decision violates equal protection. The amended Madison zoning ordinance violates the Kellerman's equal protection rights, and the ZBA erred in failing to recognize this. The amended zoning ordinance affects property, so it is subject to intermediate levels of scrutiny. Madison cannot show that the amended ordinance is substantially related to an important governmental objective. Madison cannot discriminate against owners of property who wish to engage in short-term rentals, a recognized residential use, but freely permit long-term rentals. ZBA cannot engage in non-conforming use analysis that distinguishes between these two uses when the zoning ordinance in effect at the time makes no such distinction. It cannot be a substantial governmental objective to allow long-term rentals at the expense of short-term rentals, especially absent any evidence or proof to support disparate treatment. The code enforcement officer's interpretation deprives the Kellermans of use of an otherwise proper use of their property and improperly favors hotel, motel, and bed and breakfast operators by barring their competition. Zoning ordinance should not be used to pick winners and losers in the tourism industry. The definition of motel is inapplicable to the property. The ZBA erred by finding that the property meets the definition of a motel as defined by the 2022 zoning ordinance. The 2022 zoning ordinance defines motel as a building or series of buildings in which lodging is offered for compensation with direct and dependent access to and adjoining parking for each rental unit. The motel definition by its terms applies only to buildings with multiple rental units because it requires direct independent access to and adjoining parking for each rental unit. Emphasis added, for each rental unit. It also talks of a building, not a dwelling unit or buildings. There is also no language in the motel definition about independent cooking facilities like in the dwelling unit definition. Further, unlike a motel, the property, a single-family home, is not required to have adjoining parking. Madison zoning ordinance 5.6 states that sufficient off-street parking must be provided within property boundaries for all districts. The definition of motel includes a requirement that parking be adjoining, which based on its inclusion in the definition must have a different meaning from merely off-street parking. The zoning ordinance does not define off-street parking, but does define parking space to mean an off-roadway space for parking of one motor vehicle, 200 square feet. In parentheses. Neither the definition of parking space nor the common understanding of off-street parking specifies the distance or orientation of the parking area to any areas on a property. This distinction is further evidence that the definition of motel does not apply to the property. The definition also fails to account for when the property is not rented but is occupied by the Kellermans. The definition of motel does not specify how often a property offers lodging for some compensation, but from common understanding, a motel always offers lodging for compensation. In contrast, the Kellermans do not always offer the property to be available for short-term rentals. In the periods in which the Kellermans are occupying the property and not offering lodging for compensation, it would not meet the definition of a motel. The ZBA's reasoning that short-term rentals meet the definition of a motel is inconsistent with 2022 zoning ordinance changes and the notice of violation. If a short-term rentals, such as the property met the definition of a motel, which were already not permitted in residential districts, then there would have been no need to change the zoning ordinance language. Thus, by its terms, the motel definition is inapplicable to this property. The ZBA decision is overly broad, but also fails to address plaintiff's legal arguments. NHRSA 676:5, 1 provides the authority for an aggrieved party affected by any decision of the administrative officer to file an appeal with the Zoning Board of Adjustment specifying the grounds thereof. The Kellerman's appeal to this board filed on September 14, 2023 specified in detail why the code enforcement officer's notice of violation was illegal, unreasonable, and unconstitutional. Yet on May 15, 2024, the ZBA failed to address the majority of the Kellerman's objections to the August 16, 2023 notice of violation. In addition, the ZBA's May 15, 2024 decision states that there was no legally established pre-existing non-conforming use since the Silver Shores Charter provision for renting was restricted by the Madison zoning ordinance of March 2015 prior to the purchase and first rental of the house, and that the rental meets the characteristics of a motel, which is not a permitted use in the rural residential district. This discussion is irrelevant because it is beyond the scope of the August 16, 2023 notice of violation, which does not reference the 2015 zoning ordinance, nor states that the rental meets the characteristics of a motel and cannot be a basis for denying the Kellerman appeal. Additionally, the ZBA erred by not providing sufficient findings of fact as required by statute to explain or justify its flawed decision. The ZBA should grant this motion for rehearing for this reason alone. Conclusion, for all the reasons stated above, Keith and Allison Kellerman respectfully request that the ZBA grant their motion for rehearing. After granting the motion for rehearing, the Kellermans request the ZBA reverse its decision of May 15, 2024, grant their administrative appeal, and instruct the code enforcement officer to withdraw the notice of violation. Respectfully submitted by Keith and Allison Kellerman by their attorneys, Matthew R. Johnston, Esquire, dated June 11, 2024.
Thank you, Kate. Don't worry, you'll have to do that again.
I know, that's okay. I can read fast. If I'm going too fast, let me know, because I
Perfect, thank you.
I thought you did great.
tend to,
No, you did great.
The next time, we'll just say that the next one is exactly the same as the first one, with a change of names, you don't have to read it again.
yeah,
Yeah, anyways.
All right.
I wish we could do that.
You could go through paragraph by paragraph, but overall, I did not hear any wildly new information.
No.
Nor did I.
To me, it feels like the same argument that was brought forward initially, minus obviously references to our decision.
It sounded to me like some law student's essay on some case that he had learned in it.
It is written like a Supreme Court indictment. Ask me how I know. Where is it? The last paragraph on page 6, under the heading definition of motels inapplicable to the property. The last paragraph states, additionally, the ZBA erred by not providing sufficient findings of fact as required by statute to explain or justify its flawed decision.
Yeah.
I read the findings of fact at the beginning of this. 11 points with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 with 12 subpoints in there. Did anyone feel that those findings of fact were not sufficient for this case?
Yeah, they were fine to me.
Yeah.
No.
The only
Or you
thing,
want the findings of fact?
the only change I would make to the findings of fact, and it's nitpicky thing on number 10, item B. Presumably meals and room taxes being paid, though no documentation was submitted to the board. I don't think presumably fits the thing. There is no documentation, so there is no presumption that it's being done.
But they allege that they were paying rooms and real tax, and that goes.
Then I would change the word presumably to allegedly. Allegedly. There's no presumption. They allege that they're doing it, but
They stated.
Well, we can say presumed because if they were running a short-term rental or a motel or a hotel or anything like that, and they weren't paying their rooms and meals tax, the state would come down on them.
only if the state knows they're doing it.
Exactly.
And most short-term rentals do not go to the state and say, I'm doing this.
Right.
So I really disagree with that.
These are Drew's findings of fact. I don't want to amend them without him.
All right.
I'm sure he can support his reasoning for.
As I said, it's just a wordy thing, that's
No,
all.
I get you.
I think the whole point is everything's a wordy thing if you go to that, though. I mean, this entire document that Kate just read is word. I don't mean words. I don't mean to sound facetious. I mean, but it's an arguing word statement against how something's said or how something's written against how something's said and how something's written.
Like the adjoining parking area versus off-street parking
Absolutely.
area. Absolutely.
So those kind of things are, and I know that's legalese and not my area of expertise at any level, but it becomes. It seems so possible and so probable to get caught in the weeds of purely interpretation of words, and I include presumably, allegedly, could be part of this statement where you get so caught up in that I find myself lost in the purpose of the actual the reason why we're here, why we're talking about this, why these people are appealing, because the lawyer has got us in a kind of a tailspin of words, of semantics, and I think it's very important, certainly for myself, to focus on what are we actually being asked to do here. And I agree, it's like adjacent, parking off street. Not every motel do you drive up to the front door of your little unit.
I was going to say, if I'm on the 3rd floor of a motel, I don't have adjoining parking.
You know what I mean? You have to move across the parking lot in modern motels. And again, the definition of a motel, which I was very much part of discussing at the last meeting, because of what I used to do for a living, which was hospitality, was that they provide those things. Now, one can argue all sorts of sideways ins and outs of what it isn't, what it is, but I stand by our findings of fact 100%, and I agree. I think there's nothing new at all. There's no that's an interesting point of view which I hadn't given thought to here. If there were, I think there'd be very valid reasons for us to go, wow, that's a whole new perspective.
Mm-hmm. I can't see the binder, please. I just want to see if there's any wording. Alright, given the discussion and what we've read, do we feel confident to make a motion?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on. Is this the one I'm looking for? This. I just want to make sure there's not an outline of how we have to word things for or against. Kate, do you know that? Is there a rehearing decision template Drew uses?
No,
Okay.
we didn't do that.
We haven't done that in previous ones?
No,
Okay.
no.
Alright.
Just a simple motion, I
It's,
think.
it's simple motion, and
We did that
you
with
have to
Gage.
do the because no
We-
new information was presented, if that's what you feel, no new evidence was submitted to support the claim.
Okay.
you know.
No
I
new
can-
evidence,
I
yeah.
can help
Alright,
you
so
with that.
if we make a motion, have you recorded, then we'll double check before we vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, somebody wanna make a motion?
I make the motion that we not accept the,
That we deny
deny the
the
rehearing.
appeal. Because,
Appeal for administrative decision.
Yes, because there's no new information supplied.
It's not just that.
because we
Isn't it-
feel,
Based upon,
Yeah.
can I help you?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yes,
we'll
please,
take your
Kate.
help
I don't
anytime,
wanna
Kate.
take over. So, deny the appeal for administrative decision based upon the information Attorney
Submitted.
Johnson presented
Mhm.
because he did not present any new evidence to support his claim that his applicants were going to rent a short-term rental prior to March 2022.
You got it.
Is it that simple?
No, that one
Okay,
does,
so you help me.
I don't think that one
Do
applies.
some.
Yeah,
because,
that isn't just, that's not all that's in here.
yeah, it's not just a matter of whether or not they were gonna rent it before 2022.
It's
Grandfathering
the
bit.
pre-existing non-conforming use.
Yeah, but he also made accusations of the finding of fact
Yeah.
not being sufficient.
That we
And-
I'm gonna pull
failed.
that in there too.
So, I think the first part, up until based on information provided by Attorney Johnson,
Okay, so denied the appeal for administration based upon information provided
That's this information,
by
right?
Attorney Johnson
mhm,
Because he says our ZBA decision was
on behalf of his clients, Kellerman's,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, we're being accused of
Uh,
constitutional invalidity, we're being
Clients.
accused of just violating due process, you know. And the definition of motel is, just his headings alone kind of should define it somehow.
Permission based on information provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans, as he did not, and I'm gonna let you help me there.
okay.
Okay, what didn't he do? Substantiate, further substantiate,
No,
deepen?
as he did not
Provide.
provide new information,
To support his case?
to support,
The appeal.
To support the motion for
yeah, the motion for rehearing.
Yep, because, I gotta figure out everything
I
because.
thought that was the because.
It's a because within a because.
Right,
Alright, so, do not provide new because,
support the motion for rehearing.
Basically, we stand by our previous findings of facts and decision.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a because, but that's kind of how I feel. Because there's nothing new that makes me
so,
rethink it.
what if we reword it to not have it, so, yeah, based on the information provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans, we feel as no new information.
The board feels.
The board feels as no new information to support the appeal was presented,
Hold on. Okay.
and that the findings of fact
Because. You're gonna get a cause in there,
No,
right? And because the
wasn't-
findings of fact,
and because the findings of fact are sufficient and accurate.
A substantive and accurate, sufficient, yeah.
are sufficient with the board's,
Remains sufficient and accurate. We're not, but he hasn't led us to question them, has he?
are sufficient
No.
with the board's decision.
I mean, it's are sufficient based on the board's decision.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yep.
Based upon.
I'm sure Drew will give me an earful tomorrow, but
Okay, so
Okay.
let's-
can you,
Read
can
it
you
Can you read it back?
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, deny the appeal for administrative decision based upon information provided, no new information provided,
By.
based upon no new information provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans. Period.
Yeah.
The board feels as no information,
How about therefore the board feels?
therefore, yeah, that makes sense,
Yeah.
therefore.
And then
Do we feel or we decide?
we
Therefore, the
Seriously,
we
board,
feel.
We feel. Okay.
therefore, the board feels as no information to support the appeal was presented, and because the findings of fact are sufficient,
I feel like I feel like it. Yeah, we could.
it's messy.
The order is out of order. I feel like you could start it with based on information provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of the Kellermans. Based on information, the board feels that no new information was
The
provided.
board feels no information, not as, no information was provided.
No new.
So the board, okay, so the board feels, since there was no information provided, no new information
No.
provided.
New.
The board feels since, God, I gotta write this. The board feels since no new info was provided.
There's no reason to.
In support of the appeal.
Simplify it, there's no reason to support the
Provided
appeal.
in support of the appeal.
As presented.
That invites him to represent it. I'd leave the as presented out.
The board feels since no.
The findings of fact, hold on,
And that,
are,
and that the findings of fact.
Yeah, and that, the,
and that the findings of fact are sufficient. I'm gonna read this back to you.
Yep. I'm writing it down
Sufficient.
too.
Based
I think we should end it
on the board.
so that the motion for rehearing
Okay, all right.
is denied.
Well, I
I
think
don't
that
know
goes
how
at the end.
Who's got that?
Want me to read what I've got?
Yeah, read
You
what
guys,
you.
you
Right from
guys
the
tell,
top.
I'm just trying to help.
We can workshop it.
I'm not doing it, I mean, you guys are making the motion, I'm just trying to help word it so it kind of flows.
You have to word it a certain way, yeah.
Right. Okay, so deny the appeal for administrative decision based on no new information provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans. The board feels since no new information was, now I'm repeating it,
that's okay.
was provided in support of the appeal as presented, and that the findings of fact are sufficient, and the finding facts are sufficient based on the board's decision.
Except he's not, this is a motion for rehearing,
But that's where, right near
and not an
there,
appeal.
you should enter the motion for rehearing
Okay, the
is
board,
therefore denied.
since no new motion, no new information was provided in support of the appeal as presented, and that the findings of fact are sufficient,
The motion for rehearing
thank you.
It's denied.
is denied.
And then once we have that finalized, you think we should change information to evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Because
I would say information
Hold
or
on,
I-
hold on.
evidence. Is this new evidence
Information-
or
No,
something?
evidence, I think you should.
I
put
think evidence would be the correct
Was it?
word.
Okay.
No new
Because he could tell us the sky is purple and that's new evidence.
evidence.
New information.
Yep, no,
Sound like a policeman.
well, okay, let's try this.
Okay,
Okay, deny the appeal for administrative decision based upon no new evidence.
something else.
Was
Right.
no new evidence was provided by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans, period. The board feels since, and we're repeating ourselves, the board feels since no new evidence was provided in support of the appeal as presented, that the findings of fact are sufficient and the motion for a hearing is denied.
Instead of
Defines it.
after Kellerman's period, can we just do Kellerman's comma and that the findings of fact are sufficient based on the decision.
Take out the, okay. to
That way we don't have to repeat it.
Let me scribble this all out, or I'm gonna get really screwed. Comma. Okay. All right, let's try this. I'm gonna scribble that all out, then I'm putting it in. So deny the appeal for administrators based upon no new evidence was provided. I like,
Provided, because he isn't presenting.
Yeah.
well, no new evidence was,
Submitted. Brought forward.
Submitted, brought
I
forward.
like present.
Presented's fine. I mean, we are presented.
Presented is better. Presented by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans. Comma. The board feels that the findings of fact are sufficient and the motion for rehearing is denied.
Should we mention something about in the previous, our previous decision stands, hence so the motion is provided? No?
No,
Okay.
and there's no need because
Okay.
they're appealing our decision.
Okay.
It's inherent. That, yeah, the part about the finding of fact is a little chunky.
No evidence.
It's kind of sudden,
No new evidence was presented.
because it isn't just
To
a finding.
support, no new evidence was presented to support their claim
Request.
by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients. That sounds better.
To support the request.
I'll read it
but-
out again.
Yeah.
Deny the appeal for administrative system based upon no new evidence was presented to support their claim submitted by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans.
His claim for what, though?
His claim for.
A motion
His
of
claim
rehearing.
for what
A
he-
motion of, that's where we
Motion
should
for
put the
rehearing.
motion for rehearing part.
His claim,
Is it a claim or is it a request?
It's a motion for rehearing.
He doesn't claim a motion though, does
No.
he? He presents or requests.
For- You could, for his request for
Yeah.
rehearing.
presented to support their request,
Yeah.
Yeah,
their request
for a motion for rehearing of the zoning board's
for.
of adjustment May 15th
Rehearing.
denial, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, let me read this. Deny the appeal for based upon no new evidence was presented to support. Okay. Deny the appeal for administrative decision based upon no new evidence was presented to support their request for a motion for rehearing, which was submitted by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans, period. You gotta do a period. Now you have to do, or because,
For-
because the board feels, because you have to do that because.
Can't start the sentence with because.
No, not starting it, it's gonna run
It's
along.
gotta get in there.
It's got, you have to get that because in there
Mhm.
though, because I learned
Yeah.
that in this.
Yeah.
Because the board feels that the findings of fact are sufficient
To support.
As-
To support.
Sufficient.
To support this decision.
I'm looking at you, I'm like, I'm trying to, my brain's going, they're sufficient, are sufficient to deny the motion for a rehearing.
Or to just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm trying to pull my legal
Because
stuff
that's
out.
Sufficient.
That's bottom line what we're doing. We're either,
Just sufficient to deny the
The
motion.
motion for rehearing.
The request for the motion.
I think we're
for
getting
hearing.
there.
I'm getting all
Request.
twisted, I know.
I think we're getting it though.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming. Deny
Isn't it
the
a
motion.
request for the motion? We're
I think
not-
motion or request are one and the
It-
same.
Yeah, are they? Okay. In this
All right.
context, that's
Yeah.
I'm gonna read this one more time.
Yep.
Okay, deny the appeal for administrative decision based upon no new evidence was presented to support their request for a motion for rehearing submitted, which was submitted by Attorney Johnson, sorry, on behalf of his clients, Kellerman's, because the board feels that the findings of fact are sufficient to deny the motion request. I don't like that.
It's a bit,
The motion
grammatically it's a
to
little,
deny the motion for rehearing.
because when you begin it, you say there, but we don't know who they are. That's where we should identify attorney, what's his name, and the Kellermans.
Because the board feels findings of facts are sufficient. And the motion for rehearing is denied.
Yes.
All right, want me to do one more time?
One more time.
Okay. Denied the appeal for administrative decision based upon no new evidence was presented by Attorney Johnson to support their request for a motion for rehearing, which was submitted on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans, because the board feels that the findings of fact are sufficient and the motion for rehearing is denied. Is that good enough reason to deny?
Is it just the findings of facts?
Well, that's what,
I mean, that's,
Yeah. And the lack of new information.
it's the lack of new information. Because there's procedural and new information are your basis for rehearing a decision.
I mean, you can put in there that, you know, procedural errors, I don't know.
Well, he accuses it of procedural errors. In his heading.
No, he doesn't accuse of
Not
procedural.
accuses, but he says are, constitutionally invalid.
That's
and-
not procedural.
No, it's not, you're right, decision violates due process.
Procedural would be
Yeah.
failure to notice.
Okay.
I feel like that's good.
Because we're not stating a because, we have to put a because in there. I mean,
Mhm.
we're saying no new evidence
Well,
But there
was
was,
presented.
there was a because in there.
the,
Yeah.
the motion,
I think it,
Strip it right down to what we're trying to say and
the
then.
motion to rehear case 2315 is denied because the board feels
No new
that the
evidence.
findings, it's denied because no new evidence was presented by Attorney Johnson on the
Mhm.
behalf of the Kellermans and
submitted, I had submitted.
submitted, that works too.
Yeah, this
And
count.
that the findings of fact are sufficient to uphold.
And
The
not
decision.
because,
That's a good
because-
stripped down version.
Yeah, because, so, we can start it, the motion to rehear the case is denied because.
Yeah.
motion,
Mhm. Yeah.
because,
No new evidence.
because based upon no new evidence was presented to support their request.
Based upon the
Submitted.
fact that no new evidence.
You can't put because based upon.
Based.
Just because.
Losing ya.
No new evidence.
The motion to
Because no
rehear the
new
case
evidence
is
was
denied.
supplied, that's our reasoning. Because no new evidence was provided, supplied, submitted, presented, whatever word we're using there.
I think it's to deny the motion for rehearing because based upon no new evidence presented. I'm gonna have to break this out again, based upon no new evidence presented by Attorney Johnson on behalf of his clients, the Kellermans.
But don't
The
we have
board-
to have in that we
Hold on.
voted unanimously? 'Cause it would only take one of us to,
The board feels that the
No.
findings of fact are
Majority.
sufficient, and the motion for a
in
hearing
this case,
Mhm.
denied.
I thought
It's a
I
majority.
just don't like the
Right.
because based upon.
You
Right.
have to do
One
it because
person.
in the.
Yeah, the because is good, the
We're
based upon is
creating
redundant,
rehearing.
isn't it, Kate?
no, okay.
Or because.
No
he
new
presented
evidence
new
was supplied.
evidence to support his claim.
Yeah, but you don't need the based upon in there.
Is that, I don't wanna take over you.
No, you're fine.
No, it's close, Kate.
But is that the reasoning?
The reasoning for the denial
Mhm.
is that no new evidence was
No
presented,
procedural error.
no procedural errors were committed, and the findings of fact are sufficient.
So I think that that's what we should put in there.
Hmm.
You can do
I'm
that.
gonna change this, I'm gonna cross this out, because now, I mean, look at this. I'm not gonna be able to decipher what I'm writing. All right, let me just do this again. To deny Attorney Johnson's request. We have the phones. There was no procedural error and findings of fact are findings of fact are
Sufficient, substantive.
sufficient, thank you, sufficient as written said. Let's try that, I don't know, you guys tell me.
Okay, go for it.
To deny Attorney Johnson's motion for request for rehearing on behalf of the Kellermans based upon no new evidence was presented and there was no procedural error and the findings of fact are sufficient as written. I don't know if that works. You guys
That changed.
take it from there and pick it apart.
I don't think as written is necessary. The finding is fact, whatever we said before was sufficient.
Well, you're
And then
not
we need,
changing-
I thought we needed a because word,
Well,
not a
you're not
based.
changing the findings of
No,
fact,
we're
even
not,
though he
definitely.
says,
No, fair enough. But I thought we had to have the because word in there. Take just, instead of based upon, you can do the because.
because, no new
yeah.
evidence,
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So deny Attorney Johnson's motion to request for a hearing on behalf of the Kellermans
Because.
because no new evidence was presented and there was no procedural error and the findings of fact are sufficient as written.
Works for
I
me.
think
Strip
that's
down
gotta
nicely,
be
yeah.
it. Because you're not changing anything, and he's asked that, he's saying that they're not correct.
Just because he brings up points in his motion doesn't, we don't have to respond to every point in our
Right.
decision.
Exactly.
No, we do not. As long as we've
Alright.
actually listened to them.
So this was George's motion. George, is that your motion?
Yes.
Is it seconded?
All in favor?
Doug seconds
Oh,
it?
I didn't hear him, Doug.
No, it's alright.
You were
Alright.
quiet.
So George's motion, Doug seconds. All in favor to deny the appeal.
Do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Jennifer.
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
Jake. Aye. George.
Aye.
The denial passes 4-0.
Okay,
Jake, you lied to me.
what?
You said this was gonna be 15 maybe?
Well, but that got a little twisted.
When I'm 10 minutes late, you know.
It got a little twisted that, so now you have to go on to the next one.
Okay, so that was 2315, and we're gonna roll right into 2318.
Yeah.
Kate, can you read that for us?
Okay.
Here's There's 15.
That was mine.
Oh, sorry, this
Okay.
one's yours, or Doug's.
You want 28 right there?
I will, thank you.
You ready?
This was 15.
Yeah, go for it, Kate.
Yeah.
Okay, it's starting.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
2318, request for rehearing of case 2318. Appeal from administrative decision for Matthew R. Johnson Esquire, agent for Matthew Petty and Jennifer Swift, 70 Skyline Way, tax map 205, lot 48, to determine whether or not their circumstance allows for short-term rentals relating to a denial from Robert Boyd, code enforcement officer, dated August 16, 2023, as to Article 4, Section 4.2 of the Town of Madison zoning ordinance. That was posted on June 13th, that all post offices, the website, and yep, we're good.
Just like this one, I will read the findings of fact first. And then, Kate, if you need a break, I can read
No,
the motion.
I'm good.
Okay.
I hope, I know I read fast, so
No,
tell me if I'm
that's
going
good.
too fast.
That's good. That's fine.
Case 2318, findings of fact, April 17th, 2024, and May 15th, 2024. Number 1, date of purchase was April 2023. 2, first rental by the current owners was June 9, 2023. 3, there is documentation to prove regular rentals from February 2021. 4, there was no lapse of rental activity in the time frame back to 2021. 5, selective level of activity is 32 rentals for 157 days in 2021. B, 27 rentals for 103 days in 2023. C, 2022 and 2024 were not estimated in the meeting. D, the current owners anticipate renting on the order of 100 days per year. Finding of fact 6, the home is in the Skyline Estates Owners Association. There is no mention of rentals in the deed restrictions. 7, the home was built in 2018. The first documented rental is in 2021. 8, the board understands these characteristics to define a motel based on the definition of motel in the zoning ordinance as the common understanding of what a motel is. A, it is a building or buildings that offer the service of lodging. B, for compensation with the obligation to pay meals and rooms tax. C, which provide basic support services such as cleaning and scheduling. D, independent access. E, adjoining parking. F, the lack of a rental contract for non-transient occupancy. Finding of fact number 9, the short-term rental of 70 Skyline Way meets the definition of a motel. A, the property has been rented on a short-term basis since 2021 on the order of 100 days per year, and the current owners intend to rent for a similar amount on the order of 100 days per year. B, presumably meals and rooms tax is being paid, though no documentation was submitted to the board. C, basic services were provided. The owners used Airbnb and VRBO as a contact and scheduling agent. The home was provided furnished and cleaned. D, there is independent access to the building. E, there is adjacent parking. F, there was no rental contract for transient use.
Transient or non-transient?
For non-transient use. My eyes are tired, I'm sorry. Finding of fact number 10. Motels are not a permitted use in the rural residential district according to Article 4.2 of the zoning ordinance. Based on the findings of fact as noted above, the Madison Zoning Board of Adjustment on May 15, 2024 denied the appeal from an administrative decision by a roll call vote of 4-0 because the rental usage meets the characteristics of a motel as indicated in the findings of fact and as defined in the 2018 Madison zoning ordinance, which is not a permitted use. Because the owner did not establish any transient rental history prior to February 2021, therefore not establishing any pre-existing non-conforming short-term rental use. Drew Gentile, Chairman.
Okay.
Kate, if you could read the motion
Sure.
for rehearing, please.
Matthew Petty and Jennifer Swift versus Town of Madison, case 2318, motion for rehearing of zoning board of adjustments, May 15, 24 denial. Now come Matthew Petty and Jennifer Swift, the owners, by and through their attorneys, Devine, Milnet, and Branch Professional Association, and submit the following motion for rehearing of the Town of Madison zoning board of adjustments, May 15, 2024, denial of their administrative appeal. In support of this motion for rehearing, the owners state as follows. Procedural and factual background. The owners are the owners of 70 Skyline Way, Madison, New Hampshire, the property located in Skyline Estates Owners Association. There was no mention of rentals in the deed restrictions of the Skyline Estates Owners Association. They purchased the property on April 20th, 23, and began renting the property on a short-term basis in June 2023. There is no documentation to prove regular rentals of the property back to February 2021 without any lapse in rental activity. In March 2022, the Town of Madison enacted amended definitions in the zoning ordinance which attempted to limit a single-family resident to those with a single dwelling unit used for non-transient purposes. These amended definitions are an attempt to prevent homeowners from renting their properties on a short-term basis. Beginning last year, Madison began sending cease and desist letters to various property owners, including the owners who have a history of renting their property on a short-term basis but acquired their property after the zoning ordinance was amended. On August 16, 2023, Robert Boyd, Code Enforcement Officer, issued the owners a notice of violation. The notice stated the owner's property was 1, a non-owner occupied short-term rental, 2, in violation of the zoning ordinance, and 3, continued use of the property in violation of the zoning ordinance would result in Madison commencing legal action in court. On September 14, 23, the owners filed an appeal with the ZBA challenging the August 16, 23 notice. The appeal hearing was scheduled and continued on October 18, 23, November 15, 23, January 17, 24, February 21, 24, and March 24. There's no date for March, whatever. The appeal was heard on April 17, 2024, and on May 15, 2024, the ZBA upheld the Code Enforcement Officer's decision. The owners believe the ZBA erred legally and factually in upholding the Code Enforcement Officer's decision and therefore filed this motion for rehearing. Argument: the Code Enforcement Officer made an error in fact and law in issuing a notice of violation to the owners. As will be explained below, the Madison zoning ordinance amendments cannot be applied to the owner's property. Further, the motel definition as defined by the 2022 zoning ordinance is inapplicable to this property. The owner's use of their property is a pre-existing use and thus exempt. The ZBA erred as a matter of fact and law when it determined that because the owners did not establish any transient rental history prior to February 2021, they did not establish any pre-existing non-conforming short-term rental use. Nothing in the Madison zoning ordinance has prevented short-term rentals prior to 2022 amendments. The owner's property is a pre-existing non-conforming use. The property was used for short-term rentals historically and after the most recent amendments to the Madison zoning ordinance in March of 2022. Because the property has historically been used for short-term rentals and that use has not been abandoned, the current owners, are entitled as a member of law to continue the pre-existing non-conforming use. The Madison zoning ordinance expressly recognizes the ability to continue prior non-conforming use at section 1.3C, which states any land use to the extent existing at the time of passage of this ordinance, but non-conforming thereto, shall have the privilege of continuing in such use indefinitely or reestablishing in such use within 1 year of any discontinuance. The owners provided all the requisite proof to show short-term rental history both before and after the zoning ordinance was amended without any gap in use. Prior versions of the Madison zoning ordinance do not change the analysis. The 2015 zoning ordinance has the same language in section 4.2 of permitted uses as the 2022 zoning ordinance does. However, in 2015, the zoning ordinance had no definition of transient, no definition of a single-family home, and the definition of dwelling unit states 1 or more rooms arranged, designed, or used for residential purposes with independent sanitary and cooking facilities. There is no time limit or temporal restriction on this 2015 definition. The permitted use section 4.2 specifically states that single-family houses undefined are permitted. The evidence was undisputed that the property meets the definition of dwelling unit because the structure is used for residential purposes and has independent sanitary and cooking facilities. Whether the owners occupy the property or short-term renters do, they all use the property in a residential manner. It is the use of the property that is the required analysis based on the Supreme Court's Town of Conway v. Goodrick decision in 175 NH 714, 721, 2023. Any reliance on the commercial use definition of the zoning ordinance to support a finding that the zoning ordinance restricted short-term rentals prior to 2022 is misplaced. That definition refers to the sale of merchandise, materials, or services. None of those terms apply to the rental of property. If it did, then the ZBA would be forced to declare that no long-term rentals could occur in the rural residential district because there is no way to distinguish between long-term and short-term rentals using the commercial use definition. For this reason, this activity at a dwelling unit that is indisputably residential in the nature of the use cannot be construed as a commercial use. Only after the amendments of March 2022 did the town of Madison conceivably have a basis to try to claim for short-term rentals, were not permitted in the rural residential district. The owners have demonstrated that the property was used consistently for short-term rentals before and after the zoning change in 2022. Their use of the property is a pre-existing non-conforming use. The ZBA erred. It should grant this motion for rehearing and then grant the owner's administrative appeal for this reason alone. The ZBA decision is constitutionally invalid. The zoning ordinance amendment to the definition of a dwelling unit upon which the code enforcement officer is relying is unconstitutional because of its vagueness, ambiguity, and overbreadth. As written, it is unclear what the definition intends to cover. Second, homeowners as well as seasonal renters could be barred by this new definition from assessing their properties in Madison. The revised definition of dwelling unit does not differentiate between owner or rental occupancy. Were this amendment to be valid, an owner of a second home bought after March of 2022 would not be allowed to use his or her property for periods of less than 30 days. The ZBA erred by ignoring this concern. This definition is thus void given its complete ambiguity. The notice of violation letter claims that the 2022 zoning ordinance changes make it clear that a house that is primarily rented to guests on a short-term basis rather than used as a residence does not meet the definition of single-family house. However, the change to the ordinance does not include the word rental. Moreover, the town voted down two proposed amendments directly addressing short-term rentals. Given this set of circumstances, Madison should not base its enforcement actions on ordinance language that is so vague. The Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court has cautioned that any ambiguity in a land use regulation should be, in his opinion, construed in favor of protecting private property rights. See Conway versus Kudrick, 175 NH 714, 721, 2023. McDonald CJ concurring opinion. Following that guidance should cause the ZBA to grant this motion for rehearing and then grant this administrative appeal. The ZBA decision violates due process. The amended Madison zoning ordinance violates the substantial due process rights of the owners and creates a regulatory taking under the New Hampshire and federal Constitution. Madison lacks the statutory or constitutional authority to restrict a use of their property that the Supreme Court has confirmed as a residential use. Such an action is fundamentally unfair generally and to the owner's property in particular by barring them from using their property for residential short-term rentals unless owner-occupied. Madison is depriving them of a recognized fundamental right of property ownership and creating regulatory taking. The town and ZBA's actions will have the effect of forcing owners to sell their property. It is not the province of the town or the ZBA to force owners into economic hardship. The ZBA decision violates equal protection. The amended Madison zoning ordinance violates the owner's equal protection rights, and the ZBA erred in failing to recognize this. The amended zoning ordinance affects property, so it is subject to intermediate level scrutiny. Madison cannot show that the amended ordinance is substantially related to an important governmental objective. Madison cannot discriminate against owners of property who wish to engage in short-term rentals, a recognized residential use but freely permitted long-term rentals. The ZBA also cannot engage in non-conforming use analysis that distinguishes between these two uses when the zoning ordinance in effect at the time makes no such distinction. It cannot be a substantial government objective to allow long-term rentals at the expense of short-term rentals, especially absent any evidence or proof to support disparate treatment. The code enforcement officer's interpretation deprives the owners of use of an otherwise proper use of their property and improperly favors hotel, motel, and bed and breakfast operators by barring their competition. The zoning ordinance should not be used to pick winners and losers in the tourism industry. The definition of motel is inapplicable to the property. The ZBA erred by finding the property meets the definition of a motel as defined by the 2018 zoning ordinance. In 2018, the 2018 zoning ordinance defines motel as a building or series of buildings in which lodging is offered for compensation with direct independent access to and adjoining parking for each rental unit. The motel definition by its terms applies only to buildings with multiple rental units because it requires direct independent access to and adjoining parking for each rental unit, emphasis added. It also talks of a building, not a dwelling unit or buildings. There is also no language in the motel definition about independent cooking facilities like in the dwelling unit definition. Further, unlike a motel, the property, a single-family home, is not required to have adjoining parking. Madison zoning ordinance 5.6 states that sufficient off-street parking must be provided within property boundaries for all districts. The definition of motel includes a requirement that parking be adjoining, which based on its inclusion in the definition must have a different meaning from merely off-street parking. Zoning ordinance does not define off-street parking, but does define parking space to mean an off-roadway space for parking of one motor vehicle, 200 square feet. Neither the definition of parking space nor the common understanding of off-street parking specifies the distance or orientation of the parking area to any buildings on the property. This distinction is further evidence that the definition of motel does not apply to the property. The definition also fails to account for when the property is not rented but is occupied by the owners. The definition of motel does not specify how often a property offers lodging for compensation, but from common understanding, a motel always offers lodging for compensation. In contrast, the owners do not always offer the property to be available for short-term rentals. In the periods in which the owners are occupying the property and not offering lodging for compensation, it would not meet the definition of a motel. The ZBA's reasoning that short-term rentals meet the definition of motel is inconsistent with the 2022 zoning ordinance changes and the notice of violation. If short-term rentals, such as the property, met the definition of a motel, which were already not permitted in residential districts, then there would have been no need to change the zoning ordinance language. Thus, by its terms, the motel definition is inapplicable to this property. The ZBA decision is overly broad, but also fails to address plaintiff's legal arguments. NHRSA 676:5, 1 provides the authority for any aggrieved party affected by any decision of the administrative officer to file an appeal to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, specifying the grounds thereof. The owner's appeal to this board, filed on September 14, 23, specified in detail why the code enforcement officer's notice of violation was illegal, unreasonable, and unconstitutional. Yet on May 15, 24, the ZBA failed to address the majority of the owner's objections to the August 16, 23 notice of violation. In addition, the ZBA's May 15, 24 decision states that the rental meets the characteristics of a motel, which is not a permitted use in the rural residential district, that the owners did not establish any transient rental history prior to February 21, therefore not establishing any pre-existing non-conforming short-term rental use. This discussion is irrelevant because it is beyond the scope of the August 16, 23 notice of violation, which does not reference pre-existing non-conforming short-term rental use prior to February 2021, nor states that the rental meets the characteristics of a motel and cannot be a basis for denying the owner appeal. Additionally, the ZBA erred by not providing sufficient findings of fact as required by statute to explain or justify its flawed decision. The ZBA should grant this motion for rehearing for this reason alone. Conclusion, for all the reasons stated above, Matthew Petty and Jennifer Switzer respectfully request the ZBA grant their motion for rehearing. After granting the motion for rehearing, the owners request that the ZBA reverse its decision of May 15, 24, grant their administrative appeal, and instruct the code enforcement officer to withdraw the notice of violation. Respectfully submitted, Matthew Petty and Jennifer Swift by their attorneys, Matthew R. Johnson, dated June 11, 24.
Thank you.
I know.
So before we get into it, I forgot to ask, Doug, you weren't present for this case either. Have you researched enough to feel up to speed on it?
I have read everything here, yes, I'm fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
George,
I
you
do.
as well? Okay. All right. So given what we've just read, again, I don't feel as though any new information was presented. Does that, anybody else?
No, it's just, essentially it's the same as a prior case.
Okay.
I don't feel like there was anything in here that gave me any pause for reconsideration of anything we've discussed in the previous meeting last month.
Okay.
Do you want to state nothing procedural and findings of fact?
Yeah, I don't believe anything was procedurally, no allegations of procedural error were made. And I believe there was that last part about the findings of fact being insufficient again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, by not, the ZBA erred by not providing sufficient findings of fact as required by statute to explain or justify its flawed decision.
All right. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Jennifer?
I do not, no.
George?
No.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Can I support a motion?
Sure, you can support a motion. We don't,
Does anybody have a motion?
how about using the same language as we did before?
Okay, to
Well-
approve or deny?
To deny with sufficient changes for the parties involved.
I think we need to read it.
Yes.
With the appropriate name, because,
Okay.
I mean, this, unless someone heard something different, this was, except for the names, I didn't think.
It was, there
There were a
were,
couple of little bits
there
of,
were some differences. It
Yeah.
wasn't word for word the same.
no. But the overall, case was, came
Similar.
out as very similarly.
Yep.
That,
Ready? Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Motion to deny Attorney Johnson's motion request for rehearing on behalf of the Kellermans because no new evidence was presented.
this is the Petty and
On
the
behalf
Swift.
of,
Mr. Kellerman.
Jennifer.
I'm sorry, oops, sorry, I'm looking at that one.
Matthew
On
Petty
behalf
and
of Matthew
Jennifer-
Petty and Jennifer
Yeah.
Swift, I
There you go.
apologize, my brain is, because no new evidence was presented and there was no procedural error and the findings of fact are sufficient as written.
Doug, is your motion?
Swear.
That's what you,
That sounds good to me.
Good,
So moved.
okay, so now I got a second.
second?
Second.
George seconds. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Please.
Jennifer? We are moving to deny.
Aye, Jennifer.
Doug?
Aye.
Jake, aye.
George, aye.
The denial passes 4-0.
Now, do you need to say about the Housing Board of Appeals and the Superior Court? Do you have to say anything about that? That they can, I just didn't, do you need to state that? Because I just thought of that.
I just thought that's
I'm
a,
trying to help you, you know, you don't have much with you, and you came in on the fly from a call.
I don't have a checklist. Do you have a checklist in front of you?
Alright. Let's see what I got here. Hold on,
Because that,
I just wanna make sure.
because that little paragraph says anyone who wishes to appeal must first appeal to us. So,
Hold on. Hold your thoughts.
The appeal, the appeal. Because this is already an appeal, right?
it is, and when they get denied the first time, it says it.
Okay, so they were denied the first time, this is the second time.
Yeah.
This is the second denial. So is there an
That
appeal
was
to
your
the appeal?
procedure, but I don't think you have to read anything
Yeah,
in here.
and you
does it
keep
say?
appealing.
No, I meant the,
That's my point.
like, on the original appeal for, when they're denied from the original appeal, it's read to them that they
Right,
first have
that's
to-
done. So you're good. I don't think you have to do anything. I just checked this to make sure. But I wasn't
Because in that little paragraph, we say you must first
Correct.
appeal to us.
Correct.
And then,
You're good.
before you can bring it before.
It's just me thinking out loud.
No, it's okay. You're right,
So they have appealed to us.
they have appealed to us, so if they,
Now,
That was what we just did,
yeah.
now they'll
Yep.
do whatever.
Now they have the right to go to the next
to the
level.
next level up.
Housing Board of Appeals or Superior Court.
Yep.
You choose.
That's not the correct one.
Okay,
This is the correct one.
now we gotta go.
Okay, we
Alright.
have
I'll take this one back.
Yes, you have that back.
one more page.
One more case.
George, do you wish for me to stay as acting chair? Do you want to take that back for this next one?
Finish up.
Okay.
He can join now. 'Cause they-
Yeah,
So I may join.
you may join, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, what's your name? No, you gotta sit back down.
Bill
But
Dempster.
you're gonna have to
What, did we get a copy of the request
I'm a member.
for?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
That's right.
look at that, perfect.
handwritten.
I'm a full-time member.
Case
Everybody's jumping around.
2323.
And Bill, you're a full-time member, so you don't need to.
That is correct.
Yep, we just,
Oh,
we
great.
jumped.
Nice to have you back, Bill.
You can elevate me to super,
You guys
super.
all jump around on me.
Okay, we'll move on to case number 23-23. Kate, if you can read that.
Hold on. Case 2323 continued January 17th, 24, February 21st, 24, and March 2024. And it was scheduled to be heard at this hearing, just so everybody understands that. Variance request from Henry D. Moscone for property located at 23 Mount Washington Drive, map 111, lot 7, from Article 5, Section 5.9A of the zoning ordinance to permit the metal roof over his trailer for protection. Henry came in a couple weeks ago on the 3rd and let me know that he is going to be in Florida as we are sitting here now, selling property in Florida, so he could not make this meeting and asked for a continuance to the July 17th meeting. And asked the board to grant.
July 17th.
You want to read his letter?
Sure. To the attention of the ZBA, I, Henry Moscone, have an appointment to go in front of the ZBA on Wednesday, June 19th, and I am asking for a continuance to the July date of the 17th because I have to be in Florida for the sale of my house in Florida and to remove personal property. Henry Moscone, and it was received by me on June 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel that that's a substantial enough reason
Yeah.
to request. We don't want to have to cause him losing the sale of the house. That would
No.
not be good.
Well, he's already here, so. He
I-
couldn't be here.
I would be too, really.
Florida's a big-
House, ZBA.
Yeah. Tin house, yeah,
Anybody have any thoughts on it that they want
No.
to share?
I'm cool, no.
Okay.
I move that we approve his request for continuance of his property until the July 17th meeting.
At 6 PM.
At 6
Here.
p.m. to be
Okay.
held in the lower level of Madison Town Hall.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
Second,
Bill,
Second it.
Bill
Bill
seconds.
do something tonight.
Yeah.
It's in
No
somewhere.
worries.
All right, all in favor of continuing to the July 17th meeting, 6 p.m. lower level of the Madison Town Hall?
Aye.
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 I don't do a roll call vote on that one, but
We,
that's.
do we?
No, I said, no, you don't
Oh,
have to.
okay.
I just put pass.
All right, it was unanimous.
Yeah, nope, you're good. Okay.
Approval of draft minute, well, let me back up. We have a host of cases that have predeterminedly been continued until
November.
November 20th, 2024.
Right.
Or before.
Or before.
Correct.
Yeah.
Whatever the language exactly was. Have we gotten that in writing? Because I know we have it in the
Yes.
minutes and public record, but we did get it in writing.
Yes, he did do the waiver for me on all the cases, and then I put a copy in each file,
Perfect.
so I don't have those down here with me, but
What,
yes.
on the notice, you have the Kellermans listed as being 20, you have 2315 as
Oh,
being
right.
continued.
I do.
So we can just cross
Just
that
take them
out.
off.
Thank you. I'll just read the case numbers as they have already been continued. The following cases have been continued from May 15, 2024 to November 20, 2024 or before.
Yeah.
Case number 2314, case number 2315, case number 2316, no,
No, not 15.
2314, case number
Not
2316,
15.
There you go.
case number 2317, case number 2319, case number 2320, case number 2322, case number 2324, case number 2325. Again, those have all previously been continued. Approval of draft minutes are being moved
Because we don't have.
because we don't have available,
Correct.
we don't have enough people present to form a quorum to vote on the minutes of that meeting.
You did good.
So we have to move it to July 17th, which is fine. We've done multiple minutes in one meeting before. Kate, do you have any administrative?
Everybody got the, that in their packets, the new zoning?
I'll check and I'll give you if I didn't.
If you don't, I have copies.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I put it in your packet, but
That's a good point. Everybody got a binder when they joined the board. Did you get a binder?
Oh, yeah.
Keep it up to date. Rules are always changing, procedures are changing. Even our in-house procedure that grants the chairman to move cases at will, that should be reflected in your binder, because I believe everyone has that.
did I give you a binder?
You did not give me a
No, I
binder.
think I quickly gave you the stuff for the case, for you
Yeah.
to start, so I'll give you, I think I have Dee Dee's binder, and I have Mark Topman's binder, and I have Sean Bergeron's binder, so I'll put it together for you.
Thank you, let me know when.
I've given you the important stuff to get you moving.
Absolutely, I will come and get it when you have it ready, thank you.
Do we need an updated members
Yes.
information
I can do
list?
that for you too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah.
I have
Wanted-
the member list. Let me make sure I have everybody, Bill
Before it
very
changes
nicely
again.
gave me his phone number the other day, because I didn't have his new one, I was trying to call his work number, and that wasn't gonna help me.
No, you're gonna
just
get
make
somebody, not me.
Yeah, well, it said it was disconnected, so.
Is
So it disconnected your number.
under the ZBA educational courses that are offered, is there any 91A educational stuff offered too about
I
do's and
just
don'ts?
did one, like, Linda and I did it together, I wanna say, beginning of May, we did,
Okay.
so.
Is that be available?
I think I have a recording of it, because it was through NH, you did it as well, didn't you, Jennifer?
The 91A stuff? Perfect.
I think you
Yeah,
did.
is that the one I went to,
That was the first,
went down to Concord
the
for?
first one,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
I have Jake's number. Is everybody okay if I hand out the sheet to everybody with their phone numbers on it? Are you all okay,
Yes.
comfortable with that? Because I have yours, and I just didn't know if you wanted
Yeah.
your number out,
Fine
if
with
you don't
that.
mind.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Well,
mine doesn't work half
As
the
long as you
time.
don't call me for any police-related activities, I'm good.
I will.
And mine doesn't work half
Use
the time,
911.
so, yeah.
So I think I've got everybody, I have an up-to-date list, but I'll have to give it to you guys.
That's fine.
2024 law books. Did we end up ordering those?
I did, I gave those out to,
Yeah.
Did we get them?
yep,
I don't think I did.
yep, I gave everybody.
Big thick white
Don't
book.
have it,
To be
I do
fair,
have extras.
I
That,
may have missed it. What
That.
color is it?
Yeah, I got
White.
that,
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
yeah.
Alright.
It's really fun bedtime
Gee,
reading.
I'm not 100% sure I got one.
that's
but
all right, oh, I think I've got 2 or 3 up there, so.
I could have been gone that one.
The planning board didn't want to get them anymore, and it automatically,
So are we sharing with them?
no,
Okay.
you got your own, everybody
Okay.
got their own books, but they wanted to save costs, they didn't, but it's automatically, Linda, we get them, because things change,
Yep.
so, all right, I'll get you one.
Does-
As you find you have it, just bring one back,
Okay.
doesn't matter, I mean, unless we have new members.
We don't crack it open that often, but it's just good to have.
I look at,
Well,
I
you don't read
use
it?
mine quite a bit.
Well, no, so
New chapter every night.
every word of every New Hampshire RSA is on this website called Gen Court,
I got it.
and you just Google it. I mean, even for the criminal side of it, it's
Yeah.
so much easier.
Even
And
if
it
just-
passes
yeah.
it for you.
Oh, yeah, it's easier.
Just, yeah, you can get a lot of stuff too,
Yep.
I mean, it's,
You can get references to
yeah.
court decisions and,
Mm.
what are those things down bottom, footnotes and stuff. Does anybody have anything else?
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman, for Kate. What's the status of the 2 cases that have gone to Superior Court?
Which 2 pieces?
So, 10 Barden, which is Nicholas Gage,
I haven't received anything
Okay.
on that.
and then the new one was the one at 13 Lucerne, which was,
I haven't received anything on it,
Andrew
we haven't been
Zebby's.
served anything yet. Because
Okay.
what'll happen is, when the case gets served, they'll serve the subpoena, they'll
Mhm.
serve Mike Brooks.
oh, Mike
Because he
Brooks.
has to
Okay.
accept, or I guess either one of us can take, however it works, I'm
It,
not sure.
it would be, it's generally always Mike,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because.
And then when I get that, he gives it to me, and then I submit it to our attorney. And that's how that works. Then I'll go to Chris.
Okay.
I've been following the Barden one through the newspaper, obviously.
And that's,
Yeah.
Alright.
we're
Nothing
gonna
else?
discuss that one.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.